Before we dive into this chilling case, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Stories like this, they stay with you. The rain had been hammering the small coastal town of Ridgewater for hours when the call came in. A passerby reported an abandoned car on Harbour Line Road, engine still warm, driver's door open, and a phone lying in the mud. By the time investigators arrived, the storm had carved deep trenches across the gravel shoulder, washing away any tracks that might have explained why the vehicle was left there or where its owner had gone. Detective Mara Ellison stepped out of her unmarked car, coat whipping in the wind. The missing vehicle belonged to Evan Cole, a local software analyst known for his quiet routine and predictable life. The kind of person who didn't just disappear. But the scene said otherwise. The driver's seat was pushed back as if someone much taller had used it. The headlights were still on. And Evan's phone displayed a half-typed text message. "I think someone is," it ended there. Inside the abandoned car, the air smelled faintly of cologne and damp leather. Nothing seemed broken or taken. No signs of a struggle. Just absence, clean, quiet, and unsettling. "What do you think?" Officer Ramirez asked, shining his flashlight into the nearby woods. Mara scanned the darkness. Either Evan walked into those trees, or someone wanted us to think he did. Back at the station, Evan's last day came into focus through interviews. Co-workers mentioned he'd been tense lately. One colleague recalled Evan saying he'd seen something he shouldn't have near the waterfront. But no one knew what he meant. His girlfriend, Alina, arrived shaking and pale. She admitted Evan had been receiving anonymous messages for weeks, short, cryptic warnings that he brushed off as pranks. The most recent one arrived earlier that afternoon. "Stop asking questions." Hours passed, and the storm finally quieted. With daylight crawling in, investigators returned to Harbour Line Road. That's when Mara noticed something the night had hidden: a faint smear on the inside of the passenger door. It wasn't blood. It was blue paint, the kind used in construction, fresh, still tacky to the touch. "Construction sites don't usually operate during storms," Mara murmured. Whoever was with him didn't get here by accident. They widened their search. Less than a mile away sat an unfinished commercial building, 3 floors of skeletal steel and concrete, fenced off, supposedly abandoned for months due to permit issues. But as Mara and Ramirez approached, they noticed footprints in the dirt: 2 sets. One consistent stride. The other erratic, dragged, as if someone had been pulled. Inside, the air was cold and hollow. Flashlights swept across beams, scaffolding, and puddles left by the storm. Nothing. Silence. Until they reached the basement level. A metal door stood at the end of a narrow hallway. Fresh blue paint streaked the handle. Ramirez swallowed. "Detective, this wasn't on the renovation plan." Mara reached for the latch, pulse steady but rising. The hinges groaned as the door cracked open. And when they swung it fully, what they found changed everything. The metal door slammed against the concrete wall as Detective Mara Ellison pushed it open. Her flashlight cut through the stale, underground air. Officer Ramirez stepped in behind her, his breath sharp and unsteady. The basement wasn't empty. Not even close. In the center of the room stood a work table littered with documents, maps, and photographs. Among them, right at the edge, lay a small leather wallet. Mara reached for it, flipping it open with a practiced hand. Evan Cole's ID stared back at her. But what truly froze her in place wasn't the wallet, it was the board on the far wall. A massive corkboard, cluttered with printed emails, surveillance camera screenshots, and handwritten notes in thick blue marker. A timeline. A pattern. A secret investigation. And at the center of it all was a name circled over and over again. Harbour Line Development Project. Ramirez whispered. He was looking into something big. Mara nodded. "But why hide all of this down here?" A sharp drip echoed through the room. Plink, plink, plink. It was coming from a corner behind a stack of crates. The 2 officers approached cautiously. There, bound at the wrists but conscious, was a security guard, gagged, shaken, but alive. The blue paint on his uniform matched the streaks on the car door and on the hallway handle. They freed him. The man's voice trembled as he spoke. You You have to leave. They're coming back.
Who?
Mara asked. He shook his head violently. I don't know their names. They wear masks, construction masks. They meet here at night. I tried to report it, then they caught me. What were they doing? Ramirez pushed. The guard swallowed hard. Trades. Exchanges. Documents. Sometimes storage. They were hiding things. Things that were never supposed to be found. Mara held up Evan's ID. Did you see him? The guard hesitated. Last night. He came down here. Said he needed proof. They caught him, dragged him toward the old drainage tunnel. That's all I saw. Mara's heartbeat quickened. Evan wasn't just missing, he had been taken. Before she could question the man further, something clattered above them. A heavy thud. Then another. Shadows moved along the cracks in the ceiling. They're here, the guard whispered. Mara signaled Ramirez silently. They killed their flashlights. The basement fell into darkness, broken only by the faint glow of emergency strips along the floor. Footsteps creaked on the stairs. Slow. Deliberate. Two figures descended tall, wearing grey work coveralls and blue face masks splattered with paint. One carried a flashlight. The beam swept the hallway, then the room. Mara and Ramirez crouched behind the crates, breaths tight. The masked men scanned the basement, muttering to each other, until one of them froze. The security guard had panicked. His breathing had grown too loud. The flashlight turned. A beam of white sliced through the dark and landed directly on him. Ramirez tensed. Mara grabbed his arm. Not yet. The masked man stepped forward, raising something metallic, a tool, heavy, but not lethal. Intimidation, not murder. That detail mattered. But before he could reach the guard, a second voice echoed from above. Leave him. The priority isn't him. A pause. It's the witness. Mara's stomach dropped. They weren't talking about the security guard. They were talking about Evan. And something else, something she hadn't expected. They were also talking about her. The word witness echoed through the basement like a cold warning. Detective Mara Ellison felt her pulse spike, but her mind sharpened instantly. Ramirez leaned closer, whispering so quietly she barely heard him. They know about Evan, but how would they know about you? Before she could answer, the masked men moved deeper into the basement. Their flashlight beams slid across the boards, the crates, the scattered documents. One of them stopped at the timeline Evan had pieced together. He ripped it off the wall in a single motion. Destroy everything. The truck leaves in 10 minutes, he said. They were clearing the evidence. Whatever operation Evan had uncovered, the development fraud, the secret storage, the off-books trades, it was bigger than a simple abduction. It was a scheme tied to permits, land deals, and millions of dollars in contracts. A scandal that could pull half the town's leadership into the light. Ramirez exhaled slowly. If they walk out with that bag, the whole case collapses. Mara made a decision. We move. They stepped out from behind the crates, badges raised. Police. Mara shouted. Hands where we can see them. The masked men jolted, froze, and then bolted in opposite directions. One sprinted toward the staircase, the other dashed toward the far exit that led to the drainage tunnel. Ramirez chased the one at the stairs. Mara went for the other. The chase ripped through the unfinished building, boots pounding over metal walkways and echoing through hollow rooms. The suspect slipped through broken drywall, weaving through beams like he knew the skeleton of the building better than anyone. Mara stayed on him, every step calculated. They burst out into the dim morning light behind the construction site, rainwater dripping from half-completed scaffolding. The man stumbled, regained balance, then darted toward a white utility truck parked near the fence. Stop! Mara yelled. He didn't. She closed the distance as he climbed into the truck. Her hand shot out, grabbing his arm. For a second, they wrestled, no punches, no weapons, just desperate force against desperate escape. She yanked him back, slamming the truck door shut before he could lock it. His mask slipped just enough for her to see his eyes. She recognized them immediately. Not a stranger. Not a ghost in coveralls. A city inspector. Someone who had signed off on every harbor line permit for years. He glared at her, cornered. You should have walked away, detective. Like the others. Mara tightened her grip. Evan didn't walk away. Neither will I. Ramirez arrived seconds later, the second masked man already in custody. Within minutes, backup flooded the scene. The operation collapsed in real time. Documents recovered from the basement tied the suspects to illegal property transfers, bribery, and cover-ups disguised as construction delays. But the real moment came hours later, during the search of the drainage tunnel. They found Evan Cole alive, shaken, but conscious. He had been left there, bound but unharmed, when the masked men rushed to clear the basement. When he saw Mara, relief broke across his face. You came, he whispered. Mara nodded. You were never invisible, Evan. You were the witness they feared. The case shook Ridgewater. Arrests, resignations, investigations, years of corruption unraveled from one man refusing to ignore what he saw. Weeks later, as Mara filed her final report, a quiet thought traced her mind. The security guard's warning. The masked men's words. The way the inspector had looked at her. There was more. Someone higher. Someone who hadn't been caught. At the bottom of the file lay a final note from Evan. They weren't supposed to see me. Someone tipped them off. Mara closed the folder slowly. The unseen witness wasn't just Evan. Someone else had been watching from the shadows all along. And as she walked out of the station, her phone buzzed with a new anonymous message. You think it's over. It isn't. Before the screen went dark, she whispered to herself, if you thought this case was intense, you're not ready for the next one.